Welcome to Disrupted Science, the occasional conversation between the authors of the upcoming book, How the Internet Disrupted Science. I'm Kent Anderson, here with my co-author, Joy Moore, and we're recording this on Wednesday, August 6th, 2025. Hey, Joy.
Hey Kent, how's it going?
It's going well. So we did find a really cute use of AI this week
Oh
with our
yeah.
dog photos. It just occurred to me that maybe we could, if you're watching this on YouTube, you might get a little taste. If that's okay. If that okay, is that okay with you to show the?
Yes, I give parental permission.
Okay, so
Yeah,
do I. Okay, so we'll
yeah.
show us. You can put a photo into one of the AI platforms and ask it to make a Pixar or Studio Ghibli or whatever it is version of that photo, and it does a pretty decent job. And they're very cute if you have cute dogs, which we do. So if you're watching this on YouTube, you may get a little taste of our dogs. But that was kind of fun and unexpected. So that was a little treat.
Yeah. Well, maybe we could do that as a side gig. We could make a whole movie with Cowboy and Fish and Fritzy's adventures in the wilderness.
There you go. There you go. Well, there's a new one coming out. I know what I forget. There's Bad Guys 2, I think is the new animal-centric movie coming out.
Hmm?
Yeah, the lady from that with that gravelly voice from that Peacock show where she plays the con artist who can tell she can tell immediately when someone's lying.
I
And so
don't know
she
that
runs
one.
circles around them. It's kind of like a female Columbo. I forget the name of it, but people will be yelling at the podcast now, going, "You dummy!"
Yeah.
But it comes out again. In my defense, these shows come out so infrequently and sporadically. It's easy to forget. But she's in the Fantastic Four, as though she has a small role in that, and then she's a voice in this Bad Guys 2 movie, I guess. So yeah, there's pet adventure movies are perfectly acceptable, and we've got a market there. So we'll move on to that after the podcast peaks, but we're still growing, so please subscribe. All
Yeah.
all right, so you've been tracking a lot in the news. It's been quite a week. Do you want to take us through what's in the news this week?
Yeah, I'll just do a quick run through of the things that jumped out. Also, to kind of, it's also good to do a little news recap to put the broader discussion in context,
Right.
and that's really what we're always trying to do. So, it looks like there's good news coming out of Congress, basically ignoring some large swaths of RFK Jr.'s NIH budget requests, which is good. Looks like they're holding firm on some things. We'll see how that continues to play out. But within HHS, it's really hard to know what to take seriously these days. Vinay Prasad's been out. There's been a lot of going on about that and how he handled the drug approval with the patients. And it looks like they're just getting themselves to kind of tripping over their own feet on some things.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, there's the whole lawsuit. The Children's Health Defense Fund is suing RFK, which means he's basically telling them, hey, if you sue me, then I'll have to do what I always wanted to do. It's just so not even sneaky.
Yeah,
And
lawyers.
he's lawyers.
He's a lawyer. I mean,
We
he's
see you.
totally
Yeah.
unqualified, and then he's a crappy lawyer too. So
Yeah. Well, maybe if he loses his case, then he'll win his case. I don't know. It's him constantly trying to figure out where the base is, and the base for MAGA and MAHA seems to be shifting
hmm
quite rapidly.
hmm
It's not quite so simple because you're either not extreme enough or you're too extreme, and they're trying to figure out where to fit in the middle. So,
once they
trying
start
to,
landing too, right? Like they just had an outbreak of like bad unpasteurized milk in Florida. So,
yeah,
and the Maha kids are the ones who are getting sick. So that's going to keep things shifting too as the consequences play out.
yeah. And then the work that he's been doing, spinning up evidence against food dyes and additives and things like that. Using the generally regarded as safe policy with the FDA. That's how the US has for decades been handling new things that come into foods. It's like it's okay until we find out that it's not, as opposed to Europe, which is a little bit more restrictive.
Well, one of the just want to pitch in on this. So they're pseudoscience, but what's also funny is they're pseudo intellectuals. So they're always like, well, in Europe they do this, and it's like, oh
Yeah.
man, when were you a college freshman? Did you ever get out of that mode? It's like we aren't styling Europe. I mean, I love Europe,
I
but
know.
it's not an aspiration. It's science doesn't aspire to be more or less European. Science is science. So,
Yeah, not to mention that there's different reasons for doing things in little tiny countries than in a great big one and
right.
all sorts of that stuff. But I think that the one that should be interesting is for him trying to get the red dye number 3 out of M&Ms
Mm,
could jeopardize the whole supplement industry that these people are making their money on. Because I don't know if they didn't connect the dots, but if you want to regulate things that might or may not be okay for you, that might go across the board.
right.
So we'll see where that
Yeah.
goes. Other weird news is you told me about this Orlando Bloom getting apheresis. Basically, celebrities are getting dialysis to get the microplastics out of them. It's like,
Get the
who
spoon
on
out of my
earth?
brain.
Oh my gosh. It's like it's Fresenius med spas, dialysis centers are going to be turned into, things that you could go to as prescribed by your functional doctor
Functional
and
medicine doctor, right. Yeah.
pay for it with your flexible spending account or who knows what.
I like all this like kind of second tier stories that are coming out of the grifters grifting the grifters.
Yeah.
Like the psychic grifting the one of the podcasters, and there's another one where they're like grifting the grifters, and it's just you people are just
Oh,
so delightful.
the best one I heard yesterday is there's this guy who is he bought the rights to Theranos,
Oh
and so
yeah, that's
he's
the one.
using Elizabeth Holmes' IP, and he's reviving that whole thing, and he may get traction with Mark Hyman in functional medicine. She's sitting in jail going, what the heck? You got billboards up all over the place with her name on it.
Yeah,
So it's
and he's
like,
and he's doing rap songs, and he's got like
yeah,
rented a private jet to look like he's a jet setting guy, and all this kind of stuff. It's just so hilarious. It's
yeah.
every grift, it's the grift hybrid. I love it.
It's a lot to follow.
Yep.
Well, the other thing I thought was, it's weird when you're reading the news and you're used to reading the news, and then every once in a while you got to stop and say, wait, is that a real thing that the Sean Duffy, the Secretary of Transportation, is focused on building a nuclear reactor on the moon? Did you hear about that one?
It did. Well, it's Newt Gingrich, right? So it's 30-year-old idea, our colonies on the moon that Newt was going to put up
Yeah.
in the 90s, and now the Secretary of
Well,
Transportation. I mean, this buys into the whole Becker, we got to get off this planet before we ruin it while we ruin it to get off this planet
yeah.
kind of fantasy, science
Well,
fiction, strange thinking.
that's what Sean Duffy said. Is he said it is imperative the agency move quickly so that we can get going on the future lunar economy.
Yeah, how about you install a
So,
bunch of solar panels and electric car chargers instead, and we'll keep this little spaceship we're on in good working order. How about that?
well, that's too complicated because then you have to do all the math for the buybacks of the grids and it just got to be too much of a headache. And so it's like, never mind,
Yeah.
let's just go to the moon. Speaking of gone to the moon,
Yeah.
I was in prep for today. I wanted to loop back and see what was going on with Recipro,
Oh
which
yeah.
was the publisher of the Peter McCullough Journal, where he published exactly one editorial and one Gaslight article.
Yeah. Tickets
'Cause-
warning on vaccines.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. And I wanted to see what else they were doing in terms of author services and stuff, and they seem to be gone.
Really?
I don't, none of their links work. No journals, no author services,
So even the
nothing.
McCullough article's gone?
It only exists in ResearchGate as a
Really?
standalone preprint, according to my computer.
Someone
I
turned
could be
off the
blocked.
gas on the gaslight.
Yeah.
Wow.
So if anybody knows what's going on with Recipro,
Yeah.
who they were
Disruptedscience
and
at
where they go.
gmail.com, please.
Yeah.
Let us know.
Yeah.
Because some public they listed, at least they boasted that some publishers were using them for various author services.
Yeah, they had the logos splashed all over, and because what I wanted to look for is they had a whole pricing, of, Chinese menu of what would you like to do to help us get your paper published wherever you want in an external with a DOI.
Right.
But they took that down.
They're gone.
So maybe they didn't pay their bill I don't know.
So
So there was but then the kind of the big one that we spent the most time going back and forth was around this paper that was published in PNAS.
yes, yes, yes. So this is a paper about the explosion of basically sketchy science and papers that are swamping the system, paper confetti that we've been seeing going on for years, and putting some trend lines against that. And it's a decent paper, but we'll talk about some of the things about it that don't make much sense when you actually measure it in some ways. But one of the things that it inspired me to do, and the coverage in the New York Times by Carl Zimmer, where he interviewed people involved with sleuthing and whistleblowing and all of that in the scientific publishing space, was urging people to follow the money, because that's the classic sleuthing technique. That's where, it's where the role of incentives is the clearest, and it is the root of all evil. And they're not doing that. And so it's possible that some of this is money laundering. It's some of this is, simply commercial exploitation, but nobody's following the money. And one of the other things that occurred to me is really hard to follow the money because we sweep it under the rug, right? We don't disclose who paid what. We probably would be better served to do that, because then the sleuths could follow the money in aggregate. But so the paper sought to put trends against each other, like the volume of papers being published and the volume of retractions. And one of the things you and I were talking about isn't necessarily that informative, because a lot of the papers that are being published in this mode are never going to be retracted. They're never going to be
Yeah.
looked at again. They're just dumped into the ecosystem, and the transaction's done and the publisher moves on to the whatever's next, right?
Right. In order to get retracted, somebody has to actually care enough to say something. And
Right,
that's the problem, is that there's so many papers that are out there that literally nobody cares about.
right.
But they're just feeding the grist mill. They're just feeding the search engines and things like that.
And the auto confusion, don't forget.
And yes, it's feeding the numbers,
Yeah.
but and this notion that has kind of emerged in recent years around retractions, as and somebody was telling me recently that a publisher that they work with has said kind of, well, retractions are good because it shows that the systems are working, and that's not, well, that didn't used to be the case, but I think
Right.
the exposure to retractions and what we were talking about last week with Frontiers just saying, oh, we did a retraction, they're using retractions as a tool that they were never intended to be.
Well, also, I've
So,
never had bulk retractions, right? It
right.
used to be that when the system worked, in my opinion, and I think our opinion, you had very good screening at the front end. You had low volume, highly targeted publishing events to specific communities. And a retraction was a rare event, and usually done, you had to, and carefully, usually done carefully
Yeah.
and selectively, and, with all sorts of communication out to various and sundry people and systems and all of that. And now you just have these retraction events where it's like, well, 261 papers have been retracted. And who knows if the authors were contacted, or if anybody had a chance to do anything, or 11,000 papers were retracted, or, whatever it is. And that speaks to a bigger problem in the system, but also how many papers are not retracted that should be, never have existed in the first place, right?
Well, it also raises the question of should. I mean, retractions used to be the equivalent of a safety recall.
Right,
You've got to get this car seat out of your car. Don't make another trip around the block with your baby in it.
right,
And then there were errata and corrections, and then also, the correspondence section
right.
to,
And expressions of
kind of
concern,
clarify expressions of concern. So retractions would really, is that was a last resort, is
right,
something where we need to say that this science is bad because it would lead to something else bad. It
right.
could be a number of things, but that's all changed, and now we're watching the retractions and we're sleuthing the retractions, and now we're using the retractions as a data point to try to figure out how much junk is out there. So,
Yeah, and it's not a reliable data point, because
no.
the retraction events are not described accurately. And sometimes it's because the publisher messed up some handling event. Doesn't mean this is bad. Doesn't mean that the paper's findings are invalid. Doesn't mean that there's a major conflict of interest among the authors and they're pushing some commercial thing under the cover of night. But it may mean that the publisher just forgot to tick a box in their manuscript system, and they are embarrassed and they want to pull those papers out or whatever it is. You just don't know what a retraction event means
Yeah.
anymore. And then also all these downstream stream systems don't seem to actually recognize them. So where you count them also matters. But
Well, what these researchers were doing is it was really detailed bottom up analysis, and they provide all the data that they used and their study design and everything. It was a well designed experiment based on, what they were looking for and things like that. But again, this is bottom up analysis to try to. I was thinking about what is their point of doing this research and publishing this paper, and
mhm,
why did PNAS say this is important? We're going to include this in this issue because they're trying to influence some sort of change. The quote from the senior author in Carl Zimmer's piece was, "If these trends are not stopped, science is going to be destroyed."
mhm,
And so I know that there's a lot of passion and there's a lot of concern within the scientist community, within the researchers who publish and read papers, that the concern about all this junk that's in there. And this is one way to do it, but I think there's some other opportunities. There's some different ways to go about this. Like you said, following the money. Who's getting paid to do this? Who's benefiting from this happening? This isn't happening as an accident. There aren't just paper mills out there, you know, who hate science and want
right.
to
Want
put
to
some
destroy
junk in
it.
it.
Right. There.
There's incentives in here.
Yeah.
There are also another angle that people could look at is when they're seeing increases in numbers of papers within certain subspecialties. Put that into context. These guys looked at papers around RNA.
Hmm.
Well, how many RNA scientists out there are there?
Hmm. Right.
You could look at the major societies, ASBMB, EMBO, across the UK, US, and Europe. You could get a rough number based on society memberships or job statistics to say, this is how much research is going on in this area. These are the institutions that are doing the work. These are the products that are in the pipeline. I mean, that's how we did it in clinical medicine.
Right.
When you're trying to size up a new journal, you say, well, how many cardiologists are there?
Hmm.
How many, what
It's the
new
market
drugs,
potential, right?
what's the market potential? And so I would encourage the sleuths to kind of zoom out a little bit and look at the market potential where you're seeing clusters of papers on topics. Is it really truly representing more research output, or is it just more paper output?
Right. And well, go ahead.
And then I was going to say that this language is also being used against this, and we've been going on about this for months now.
Right.
When you look at, and Zimmer also pointed this out in his article, that the gold standard science executive order that Trump put out did cite falsification data by leading researchers has led to high profile retractions of federally funded research.
Right.
So they didn't just figure that out on their own. They're regurgitating a lot of the things that they're seeing being reported out from the industry. And the way it's been interpreted in terms of policy has nothing to do with what we're talking about in terms of paper mills and falsification. So it's just another hazard of doing research within specific areas and then overgeneralizing it to a systemic malady.
Again, with the incentives and the money, that there's a business of some kind behind this, right? Whether it's normal commercial business based on transactional publication events, or there's some money laundering aspects to it, funneling money to various players who then cash it out into safe bank accounts and then can use it as they please. Some combination of those two. I think Elizabeth Bick kind of got onto it a little bit when she talked about credit card companies checking for suspicious purchases. I would say that's not what we should be checking for. We should be checking for suspicious payers and who is paying for this, because we've seen, and I just saw another example today of brokers trying to bribe editors into publishing things faster and publishing things at all. So there are people who are trying to push money into the system for some reason or another, and it's not to make a profit off of publishers. It's to push money around. And so one of the things we wanted to talk about and reframe this a little bit is, are we running what we would call the dumbest ad business?
Yes, there are publishers that are making money off of these papers,
Right,
right? Of the paper mill papers, off the good papers. It doesn't matter what the papers are for. They're getting paid to publish.
right.
And so you could liken that to advertising.
Yeah,
But then when you look at when you follow the money, this is not a good business. This is a really dumb way to run an advertising business. So let's talk about that and put it into context and maybe offer some recommendations. If you want to be in the scientific paper advertising business, maybe we have some ideas to help you do it more responsibly and profitably.
right. So one of the things both Joy and I experienced when doing market research over the years is that readers like ads, right? Readers, practitioners in every field are commercial operators themselves. They buy equipment, they run businesses, they run labs, they pay people, they have payrolls and things like that. So they like to keep track of what's going on in the commercial world, and they learn a lot from the advertising. But the,
And if you can attract, top tier advertisers,
right,
that means that your audience is valuable. And I've had editors come to me over the years saying, "Why aren't we getting the same ads as so and so journal? I want that,
yeah,
that
there's a pecking
company in
order
our
of
journal."
advertisers.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not like we're anti-advertising. We understand that it's perfectly acceptable and readers actually like it and enjoy it. And we do too. We like looking at ads and seeing what's going on in the commercial world, who's moving, who's not, who's, spending, who's not, who's got an interesting new product, who doesn't. But we are concealing paid placement behind a series of euphemisms. And I put up a chart in the post for this week's podcast showing kind of the migration from advertising to open access gold OA on the content placement spectrum. And I'll put it up in the YouTube of this. But there's basically been a migration. So now you have editors owning decisions to make paid placements. And we call it open access. One of the CEOs of one of the big commercial publishers called it pay to publish in an internal email we got to see. And so what is it? If it's pay to publish, what what makes it an ad, or what doesn't make it an ad, right? So if this were a regulated online information system like you would have hoped by now we might have, you would probably have some rule that would say paid placement is advertising like we used to in print, right? You had to count it different, you had to label it differently. And typically we have until we got to open access, right? So sponsored content, custom content, all of those things, we would put tags all over it, sponsored by whoever. But then when it came to pay to publish articles, we stopped that because why exactly? Because
Well, because there's that lovely little logo with the unlocked lock, right?
right,
There's a lot of symbolism and euphemisms and green versus red,
right, right,
and open versus closed
right. But
and
there are implications, right? So
yeah.
if you start thinking about this as a advertising business, right,
Mhm.
then it's interesting. You'd have a retraction, first of all,
Retracted
a
ad.
retracted
This product
ad.
this product was faulty.
But then you also have editors essentially working on commission that they don't know the rate that they're working at. So they can't
Yeah.
calculate out whether they're actually some. I think actually some do. Now that I think of it, I think some actually do know what their commission rate is. I've heard of that, and they have complaints about double dipping. Well, you can't
Mhm.
have those complaints because it's just an ad line. So when people are talking about, well, we're now more than 50% articles OA, then the industry's ad line is over 50%. You might think about
Yeah.
it that way, right? It also becomes clearer that when you try to, like the NIH is proposing, regulate APCs, you're actually regulating advertising prices. So it's a restraint of trade. So it's a little bit clearer
Right.
there. But you look at the value, like you said, it's not a great ad business because if you get one of these ads placed in a journal, it's persistent, it's ubiquitous, it's widely distributed all across many different platforms. And bargain
Hmm.
journals give the same value as a high price journal in that regard, right? The branding's different, but the
Yeah.
distribution can be just even more immense.
Well, right. That's what we've seen play out. I mean, you do get amplification by being associated with a big brand, but as we've seen very clearly, you can have one PDF of an article that was in a journal that no longer exists on ResearchGate, and you can do a lot with that.
Yeah, change government policy with that. Yeah. Well, you have people who place papers in order to drive market awareness of their other projects, right? So, for instance,
Yeah.
that paper was placed in order to legitimize a a bit of political theater
Yeah.
that McCullough knew he was going to engage in. And that is part of his overall grift around, helping people with vaccine problems, so his supposed vaccine problems. Then, you have, the Parkinson's and golf courses and a book launch around that, right? You mentioned
Yeah.
that.
So, so, so when authors are paying to publish open access, they're doing it for many different reasons. That we all assume it's because your funder said so, and it's a good thing to do this because we want to make science available to everyone. But when you really look at different publishers, different journals, and different authors, and you kind of follow their behavior, you know that the real thing that's going on is people are choosing where to publish and what to publish open access in order to sell the product that this paper describes. So the product could be, I completed this portion of my grant and therefore I need to register it. So they're advertising that on behalf of their funder and for their own academic success.
Hmm.
And then you can go down the spectrum of different motivations for people publishing, especially publishing open. And so if we're talking about advertising as and media placement as the analogy,
Right.
if you understand who your client is, so the author is the client, they're coming to you saying, I want to advertise this thing. This is what's in this paper. Okay, who do you want to reach?
Hmm.
And how quickly do you want it placed? And how much do you want to spend? And then tailor your offerings accordingly. This is what medcoms and special sales and reprints and commercial reprints are still a thing. I
Hmm.
don't understand. I mean, you go on these MDPI and Frontiers journals and they have purchase commercial reprints on this open access stuff. I wonder if anybody does. And if they're selling those too, then they're really smart.
Yeah.
But just to give some examples of journal shopping by some particularly savvy authors, I mean, you mentioned Mark Hyman. He published his Parkinson's Golf Course Association paper in JAMA Network Open. He didn't publish it in JAMA.
Hmm.
That got picked up by Joe Rogan. That freaked people out, and it was a good way for him to say, I have a book coming out that will help you assuage your fears once you believe everything that I say and
Right.
sign up for functional medicine.
Right. And get off the 18th green. Yeah.
Yeah, that's not good advice. You should still go golfing. Another big high profile one is Athletic Greens and their science-based marketing, where they published a series of papers in MDPI and Frontiers journals. I think there are 4 of them that kind of fit together. They created the whole narrative where they could cite each other, so it actually looked like they were building on science, but it was their own
Yeah,
It
the
was their
media play,
own
right?
labs, but it was the media play. It was so that when you go to the Our Science part of their website, you can see these papers. And so then when Joe Rogan and Andrew Huberman are investors and they're promoting it on their podcast, they can say this is based on science.
Mm-hmm.
So they paid, MDPI and Frontiers, I don't know, few $1,000 here and there in order to launch one of the biggest supplement brands that we've seen in recent years. And it's,
And this is what makes it such a terrible ad business, this open
yeah,
access thing, because that kind of placement, people are, the companies, if we're being totally cold-blooded about this, which we are going to for the sake of this exercise,
speak
then
for yourself.
but that kind of media placement with that kind of persistent with DOIs and distribution and redistribution and citability and scientific veneer, all of that is worth multiples of whatever they paid. And you're leaving huge amounts of money on the table when you have a commercial play like this, and we should be able to see that coming a mile away. I mean, it's pretty obvious that when it's happening, I think.
And it doesn't mean that all of the science isn't good, but if the authors work for a company that also is the funder of the thing and they mention the name of the product in the title of their article, they're not publishing it so that other people can learn about their good science and build on it, right?
Right.
This is for their patent applications.
Marketing campaigns.
This is for their marketing. This is for them raising money. Another good example is this OneSkin nutraceutical skincare line that I first heard about last year from a podcast ad.
Right.
And I looked it up, and it turns out they published one paper in NPJ, Nature Partner Journal, Aging.
Right.
And that was basically their product had already been on the market, but this is what really broke it for them in terms of getting their funding and getting Matthew McConaughey's wife to be a spokesperson for it. And it ticked all the boxes of keywords that the longevity community is really interested in. And that paper was the turning point. They even say it on their website that launched their company. And so that one author payment to that one Nature journal was what got them $10 million.
Right.
So
It's a great ROI.
that's it
It's a
sure
great
is.
ROI.
Yeah. Does anybody else want to cite that other than them? No. I mean, and then they published follow-up papers, and then they shopped around for the right journals for those too. They published with Nature because they wanted the word nature next to their product. They published some other things in different journals with different publishers, again, open access so that they could link to them.
What sticks to me
So,
is so funny about this is you remember one of the things that started the open access movement was that there was too many positive results. There's positive result bias in scientific publishing. Think about something that feeds positive result bias. By running the worst ad business in the world, where for super cheap, you can sell somebody space to make very positive claims about products that actually probably, like Athletic Greens, and I'm sure some of these others, in 10 years will be distant memories, and you'll have to really search to find anything about them because they're going to,
now I could see all the yard sales with the AG1
right, shaker
bottles with the green sludge, and it was like, what was it? It was like Nutrisystem or,
right,
Slim Fast or the other one, this is just, oh God, now I've got
right.
more plastics left over from their branded bottles of their green powder.
Yeah.
But the OneSkin example ties into, I think, who is the Mac Daddy of all shopping, which is David Sinclair from Harvard.
Yes, our friend.
And I just did a little Google Scholar looky-loo on him this morning, and he publishes so prolifically, and he publishes probably 10, 20 papers a year on different topics, and then interspersed you can see all his patent applications as well. But if his name doesn't ring a bell, he's an aging geneticist at Harvard. There's been some discussion about how much money he brings in personally to Harvard through his lab, and I think in an article a few years ago, it's like $3 million a year he brings in just to his lab, and he's a big NIH grant recipient through the Aging Institute. So it looks like his funding will probably be preserved by the current administration. But one of the big headlines with him a few years back is his research into resveratrol, and that I think was published in Nature proper, and he really worked on that and made a big case for it. He founded a biotech on the back of that. GSK bought it for $720 million.
Wow.
And then once they started, opening the box that they just bought and found out that this wasn't going to do anything, they shut it down.
Right.
So they spent $720 million, of which David Sinclair got to keep $8 million. But then he just keeps paying it forward. But he is very systematic in publishing. He'll publish an opinion piece in Nature. I'm just saying, this is just my thoughts, right? So that's not really subjected to great peer review. It's
From
an
Harvard,
interesting,
and I have an idea. I have some thoughts I'd like to share.
yeah. So, and that makes total sense to be published in top journal magazines like that.
Right.
But then he'll publish a confirmatory study in NPJ Aging or Cell Reports, or so you can see that they're playing with but still playing with the brand. And so, and again, if you want to follow the money, there's you look up who they're connected with, the supplement industry. You can look at the papers. You can look at NAD Plus. It's a big one that's being sold right now, and his former advisor at MIT started Elysium Health on the back of that, and turned it into one of the biggest supplement companies out there.
Right.
Of course, backed by Silicon Valley.
Of course.
Anyway,
Because they're going to live forever.
yeah. So the point is, we're following the money, and when you follow the money, you could see that you're leaving a lot of money on the table. And so there's a couple of different things you could do about that. You could either, become more transparent,
Right.
or
you could charge more. I mean, you
or
could do
charge more.
both. You could do both. The other we're talking about preprints, which have also been used by commercial entities to drive stock prices, create awareness, feed various commercial interests. And we're kind of like, where do they fit in the advertising environment? And we're stuck between either menus on your windshield or flyers on telephone poles, right? So,
Yeah.
or, slapped up on the construction boards, on the boards around construction sites, today, a brand new preprint out, check it out. So,
Yeah. And then I guess the new bulletin board is LinkedIn, where every author is
oh,
promoting their paper. And I'm
so
sure
honored
that
to be
is,
published in. Yeah.
I just did my homework.
Well, and then
Everyone.
Substack, I guess, would be those guys out in front of clubs handing out the little cards to get you in at a discount. It's like, hey, come on in. We got a coupon now. Come in and see
That's
our preprint.
right.
Um,
Yeah. Do you
or our
like
paper.
comedy?
Yeah,
Do
that's
you
right.
like comedy
Do you like to
karaoke?
laugh? Do you like to
Do
sing?
you, what do you mean? They're on the boardwalk. That's
Yeah,
the boardwalk. I can
exactly.
see that.
So the deeper question is this compatible with a truth-seeking business, right? Is having pay to play, pay to publish, as one CEO called it, compatible with this? And we bring it around with kind of a hard turn here, that it's important to remember that advertising is the original sin of the internet in many people's opinions. And we are now potentially running one of the most influential advertising businesses under the guise of a truth seeking business, which, when you start thinking about truth in advertising, then if it's an advertising media business, it should be managed like that, right? Transparently and more profitably. Selling a service to a client identify the client, price it accordingly, disclose to the reader that you were paid to do it, and stop with the euphemisms of the unlock and the green and the happy, you know,
Yeah.
imagery, because it's down and dirty commerce. And I think that's one of the big things the PNAS people missed, was that how much money was being held by the people who published all those retracted papers. No refunds given, right? How
Mm.
much money was there? Where's the money line in those charts? I would love to see them put a money line in there. And how much of that advertising was for products, was they were bad ads. They were ads for bad claims, right? So,
And because they're all mixed together and they use Scopus and Web of Science to do their research. So all of these things are so that means that your discount flyers and your free sample, are intertwined
right. They're on the nice
with good
tables in the
stuff.
in the fancy
Right.
hotels too, right? So
Yeah.
they're getting in there, and so it looks more legitimate, but it also obscures the source.
Right. And the scientists don't like it. They're complaining, like they have been since the beginning of time,
Hmm.
that there's too much to read
Right.
and this is overwhelming and we're at a tipping point and we can't handle it anymore.
Right. Right. Please stop.
And
Sad.
so I guess that's why I have to say, like, why are these scientists spending their time, doing this analysis, is because they're really fed up and they want something to change.
Right.
And I think by publishers who are financially invested in how things are going right now. And I think we need to be very clear about that. You look at the earnings reports, we're talking about manuscript numbers going up there, and this is to be celebrated. This is showing a positive upward trend.
Right.
So the publishers are incentivized for these manuscript numbers to go up, and they're incentivized to publish a good percentage of them.
Hmm.
And so what the other thing that these authors in this PNAS paper completely missed is there's no mention of publishers. They're talking
Right.
about editors, they're talking about authors, they're talking about journals, they're talking about bad actors and things like that. But nowhere do they mention, who's really in charge here of doing something about this one way or the other. And that's, probably I would say like 5 major publishing companies
Yep. Yep.
could change this
Yeah,
if they wanted to.
and a lot of attitudes and a lot of double talk. I mean, I've run into editors who talk about, they know they're on commission. They know that if they accept more papers, they make more money for their journal and they're set up better long term. Their jobs are safer, all of that. But they hide it for their own self-esteem and self-regard and sanity behind open access. It has to be open. And it's like, you're really talking about, I have to keep getting my commissions. And I think that the big issue, and we're going to talk about this in the future episode, is governance. And that's where we are falling down as publishers. It's where the scientific community is falling down. It's where the US government is falling way down. But we are in a governance crisis era, and we're part of it. Tech world governing itself well. It's not being governed well. We're not governing ourselves well, and we'll talk about governance as an important issue. But we wanted to raise this as a way of looking at open access and why there's such a problem. And also, please follow the money sleuths. Please put a
Yeah.
money line next time you do something and talk about the business incentives that are driving this, both on the purchaser side and the seller side, because they are meeting and they are making line go up.
Right. But it depends on what is the motivation for the sleuths who
Right.
are doing this work. They're the ones who are the experts in image analysis and study design, and they're experts in the science, and that's where they're looking to solve the problems with the toolkits that they have and with the knowledge that they have. So that makes sense. So I don't know that we want to turn them into forensic accountants. We might need to go find another group of sleuths to do that.
Yeah, I think I actually want to do that. So if you're a forensic accountant out there who somehow that buzz term got on your search engine and you did want to contact, just say it a couple of times. Forensic accountant, forensic accountant. come contact us at disruptedscience@gmail.com, and we want to see what you can tell us about all this stuff going.
Ben Affleck, I see a third movie in the works. It's got all the intrigue. We've got international
Oh, he can be drawn on glass
gangsters.
walls inside of.
Oh, we've got physics content.
Oh, we've
We've
got.
got
Oh,
nanotech.
he would go to
Ah,
Switzerland and take some people down. Oh yeah,
they're going to battle it out on the Alps. I can see it
it's
now.
going to be
This will be
scenic.
great.
All right, all right. So that's our main topic for this week. So let's move on to discoveries of the week. All right, I'm going to dive in first this time because I had a discovery this week. My daughter texted me last Friday morning, and said, "Hey, I can score 3 tickets to the Linkin Park concert tonight. Do you want to go with me and my boyfriend?" And I said, "Well, yeah, I do." So I went, and I had a very disappointing experience at TD Garden not even 2 weeks before with Ghost, where they had a very underwhelming show. And so I was heartened to see and hear a meticulously produced, superbly performed, and just chef's kiss mix sound of a show. It was exhilarating from top to bottom, and at every moment. And I don't know their music that well, but what's so interesting is that you could just, I mean, the crowd was so into it. And I don't have
Yeah.
bars like their rapper, and I don't have, I don't know their lyrics that well, but the crowd was just right in. They were just right on top of everything, and it was so exciting to be there. So, if you have a chance to see Linkin Park while they're on tour, please do,
Yeah.
because the light show, the sound was just immaculately mixed. It was so clear and beautiful. And then the performance is great, and their new lead singer, she is great, and the band gets along great. They're super fun, and she is winning fans over. I heard multiple fans say, "Boy, I didn't know she was that good." And yeah, she is. Emily Armstrong, is that her name?
I know her last name is Armstrong. I thought it was Casey, but I could be wrong.
I think it's Emily. But anyhow, that's
It's
I need.
Ms. Armstrong
Ms.
did a great
Armstrong is
job.
the bomb, and Lincoln Park concert. Check it out. Make sure you grab some tickets because it's amazing. All right, so that was my discovery of the week.
All right. Well, on that same theme of throwbacks,
Mm,
2005, there's a lot of things that are coming back into style. And that kind of, you were telling me about Linkin Park, I was like, when were they big? What was their big song? And so they were definitely, hitting their peak. And a lot of those anthems that everyone was singing along to came out in the early 2000s, along with skinny jeans
mm,
that are now back. So if you
mm.
still have your skinny jeans in your closet, did you wear skinny jeans to the Linkin Park concert, Kent? I bet people around you were. Come on.
People around me were, and some maybe should have had a second thought.
But so skinny jeans are back, and along with that, the other thing that's back from 2005 heyday of when it was novel and exciting is RSS feeds. And I
Yes,
don't know if you've been hearing about that, but you
yes.
gotta.
What is up with
It's,
that?
well, it's to counteract the unshitification. If you want
Mm,
to unshitify your content consumption and you want to go around the
subscribe to feeds.
algorithms, DIY. So I
Ah,
remember when this rolled out and going to editorial boards and explaining to them what they were and telling them to download these feed readers and set them up. And we were going to, I don't know what happened in the meantime. I'd love if, I guess the algorithms took over once we got into kind of
the
automated
platinum.
and yes, the attention economy and recommendation
So it's a way of
engines and
going around
all of these
platforms, right?
things. Yeah, it's your personal. You only get what you want.
Right.
So,
Ah, that's why I'm
yeah.
glad. I
So,
have seen that a lot lately. So yeah, that's a good one.
yeah. So, if you want to feel good this weekend, listen to some Linkin Park, get out those skinny jeans, and set up your own RSS feed reader and start to pick and choose what you want to see without an algorithm getting in your way.
Exactly. All right, so that's it for this week. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks to our friends at Provoke the Truth for the music. And as always, let us know what you think. You can reach us at disruptedscience@gmail.com. A silly sign off for the week. I don't know what this week's silly sign off is. You have one?
I guess we could continue on the Depeche Mode theme and just stop talking now. So enjoy the silence.